Listening to Jorge Mario Bergoglio speak today and comparing his words with those of Pius XII make us understand the abyss that separates a true pope from his grotesque parody, the abyss that divides the vicar of Christ from the Simia Pontificis, the epoch of the Pope. The high priest has been perverted into arrogant authoritarianism and tyranny. A few weeks ago, an important collaborator of Hillary Clinton and John Podesta was arrested for pedophilia and child pornography. I'm referring to Slade Sommer, a man with ties to the world of Broadway and cinema, who play a role in the effort to debunk the infamous Pizzagate affair. That is, the network, filthy complicity and horrendous crimes against minors that revolves around the international deep state. We have learned that certainly Jeffrey Epstein and most likely Ghislaine Maxwell were members of the Israeli Mossad. This makes us understand that the famous trips of many well-known people to Epstein Island were used to blackmail them by collecting evidence of their guilt in participating in heinous ritual crimes against minors. And if the heads of state and governance officials of the Western world do not dare to breathe out a word of protest against the massacres of civilians in Gaza Strip, it is legitimate to assume that this attitude is due to the intensive dossier with videos inculpating them that are in possession of the Israeli intelligence services. The same thing must be happening with the preparation of the fake pandemic emergency, which was lavishly replicated in all the member states of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations, and also with the farce of the Ukrainian crisis. But this blackmail of the powerful of the world constitutes the unifying element of the globalist subversive project. Millions of people in the world, after criminal inoculation campaign following the psycho-pandemic fraud, there are people who still refuse to recognize the causal relationship between the administration of the experimental gene serum and the mass extermination planned and declared by the elite. So also in the ecclesiastical sphere, in the face of the devastation caused by the conciliar revolution and the so-called liturgical reform, there are still those who do not want to admit the causal relationship between. Are we to think that the partnership between the deep state and the deep church was limited to complicity in financial speculation, when a pedophile like Slade Sommer collaborated with the Clintons and Barack Obama, all of whom were implicated in Pizzagate? Or that Bill Gates' numerous flights to Epstein Island, along with those of numerous actors, rulers, politicians, bankers, and VIPs, have nothing to do with the network or complicity of the Lavender Mafia. From the leaked emails in the WikiLeaks case, we know that John Podesta was working on behalf of Hillary Clinton and Obama, the globalist elite in general, to promote election within the Church that was supposed to oust Benedict XVI from the papacy, elect an ultra-progressive pope, and substantially modify the Catholic magisterium by making it accept the demands of the Agenda 2030. So, gender equality, the introduction of the gender ideology and the LGBTQ plus doctrine, the democratization of the church government, collaboration in the new Malthusian project of the Great Reset, cooperation of immigration and cancel culture. It seems clear to me that this subversive project has found perfect realization in the appointment of Bergoglio. As I use the word appointment deliberately, and that is confirmed by his consistent pattern of act of governments in magisterial teaching, both public and private, over the course of this most inauspicious decade. An action that has in fact carried out the wishes, the desiderata, or rather the mandates, the mandata, of the orders of the elite, point by point, in such a precise way as to be unequivocal. Gender equality with the opening of roles in ecclesiastical government and ministry to women, the moral legitimization of sodomy and gender ideology, with the admission of the sodomized and transsexual to the role of godparents and being witnesses at weddings, fake democratization, following the model of oligarchies in the civil sphere through synodality, the acceptance of the pseudo-environmentalist demands, the drastic downsizing of the condemnation of abortion, euthanasia, the genetic manipulation, to the subversion of the Pontifical Academy for Life, the campaign to welcome illegal immigrants in the name of an inevitability of the mixing of races that is not free from economic interest, cancel culture with its denigration of the history of the Church and the falsification of the Holy Scriptures. And indeed, on closer inspection, it is always the promise of an economic quid pro quo that binds the member of the deep church with the agents of the deep state. The elite has paid them the pretium sanguinis of their betrayal with sponsorships and funding. I wonder if Bergoglio's grotesque attempt to reevaluate Judas Iscariot do not betray the instinctive sympathy of a traitor for Iscariot, Mercator Pessimus. So let us go back to the pretium sanguinis, the payment of services rendered by people who have been blackmailed not only by those who know the most disconcerting and obscure secret about them, but also by those who agree with them, while holding similar roles in other nations, in the European Parliament, the UN, the World Bank, or in other international institutions. Imagine if Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau dared to consider dissociating himself from certain issues. For example, the silence about Netanyahu's war crimes in Gaza, that disobeying the orders given to him, even before the news reached the media, it would be his counterparts in Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand, and United States, France, Poland, Belgium, and God knows where else, who would put pressure on him to keep quiet, knowing full well that the Mossad would not hesitate for a moment to drag into a scandal and jail not only Trudeau, on whom charges for rape of a minor are pending for now held up in some prosecutor's office, but also those members of the international pedophiles elite, when evident of other crimes committed by the same Justin Trudeau. For this reason, it was necessary for corruption to become endemic to the system, so that the globalist cancer could be etched into it. It would be foolish or irresponsible to believe that the Bergoglian hierarchy is exempt from this blackmail. We know rather that Bergoglian hierarchy is largely involved in the same vices, with the protection of Bergoglio himself. On the other hand, what credibility can the Argentine Jesuit claim to have when in the case of Megaris he personally decided as res judicata the conviction without trials of one of the most powerful cardinals in the last 50 years, avoiding the examination of witnesses who could have given the names of his accomplices, who are now promoted to the highest level of the church or public institutions, that an emissary of Freemasonry could go so far as to be elected pope with the purpose of demolishing the church from within, usurping and abusing the very power of the papacy itself against the papacy. Nor could he have imagined that a hypothetical pope could surpass mere heresy and embrace all-out apostasy. No doctor of the church has ever contemplated the possibility of an apostate pope, or of an election falsified and manipulated by powers avowedly hostile to Christ. Catholics today are scandalized by the fearful silence of cardinals and bishops, for the same reason that citizens are shocked by the complicity of politicians, doctors, journalists, judges, and law enforcement in the betrayal of the social contract. They have come to understand that it is the entire system that is hostage to the enemy, and that it is useless to hope to obtain justice and truth from those who are in support of the global coup d'etat, whether in the civil or ecclesiastical sphere. The subversive operation is so efficient and organized that it unequivocally shows the work of Luciferian intelligence, thus goes far beyond the alleged cunning of Klaus Schwab or a Rockefeller. This is why the Bergoglio problem cannot be solved by ordinary human means. No society can survive the total corruption of the authority that governs it, and the Church is not different when her members, especially her pastors, refuse to recognize the root causes of this doctrinal moral and spiritual corruption and limit themselves to deploring the excesses of this or that statement made by Bergoglio, without understanding that we are dealing with the homo iniquus et dolosus of the Psalm 42, the unjust and deceitful man, unjust because of the purposes he has, deceitful because of the means he uses to attain those unjust ends. To speak of formal heresy in Bergoglio's case is like accusing of mere embezzlement the criminals who are now killing millions of people with little serums, poisoned air and water, harmful and artificial food, planet, famine and pestilences, induced sterility and death, either actual physical death or civil ostracization. We are far beyond heresy, as we are beyond the normal crimes of which head of state can be accused, with the aggravating circumstances that the culprit knows, or rather hopes, that he can save himself from condemnation because his main accusers consider him to be the supreme pontiff, and as such exempt from any human tribunal. Prima sedes an emine judicator. The first seat is judged by no one. It was precisely on this principle that those who had him elected Pope relied. But they forgot a small detail. The intention to harm the Church by acting on behalf of an enemy power is not compatible with the acceptance of the papacy. There is therefore a defect of consent, given by the will of the one elected, confirmed by his words and deeds over the last 10 years, namely, intending to act in fraudem legis, circumventing canon law, and concealing his intention from the very first appearance on the loggia of the Vatican. I repeat, we are not dealing with a situation where a pope adheres to one specific heresy, which moreover Bergoglio has done repeatedly. No. The situation is rather that a man was elected, was sent into the conclave with orders to revolutionize the Church from the top, while sitting on the chair of Peter. And again, he did not assume the papacy unreservedly, and only later allow himself to be persuaded by bad counselors to act in a questionable way. No, instead, his predetermination is evident, confirming both by the correspondence of his actions with the orders that had already been given by the deep Church under the pontificate of Benedict XVI, whether by the conspirators of St. Gallen Mafia or the Pact of the Catacombs, and by the repeated meeting of the Argentine Jesuit with exponents of the globalist elite and the world financial potentates before the eyes of all. Even if Benedict XVI legitimately abdicated, although aware of the risk of making the election of the Argentine Jesuit materially possible, it is the malicious intention to abuse the authority and power of the papacy, assuming it by means of deception, which which make the Vitium consensus real and make Bergoglio an usurper for the throne of Peter. The consensus and support for the Argentine Jesuit comes significantly from the ultra-progressive and pro-heretical wing that sponsored his election. All notorious members of the deep church and closely linked to the homosexual and pedophile lobby of the deep state. If there are those who stubbornly insist on examining the finger of those who denounce this coup d'etat and not at the moon of Bergoglio's evident coherence with it, we cannot behave as if we were resolving a question of a point of canon law. No, the Lord is being outraged. The Church is being humiliated. The souls are being lost because a usurper remains on the throne. It's that Bergoglio's uninterrupted behavior before, during, and after his election alone count as proof of his inherent iniquity. Can we be morally certain, then, that the tenant of Santa Marta is a false prophet? My answer is yes. Are we therefore authorized in conscience to revoke our obedience to someone who presenting himself as Pope is in reality acting like the biblical wild boar in the Lord's vineyard, or like the hireling who is not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not? There was no care for the sheep. Yes. What we cannot do, because we do not have the authority, is to officially declare that Jorge Mario Bergoglio is not Pope. The terrible impasse in which we find ourselves makes any human solution impossible. Our task must not be to engage in abstract speculation of canonists, but to resist with all our strength, with the help of God's grace, the explicitly destructive action of the Jesuit Argentine, refusing with courage and determination any collaboration, even indirect collaboration, with him and his accomplices. This infernal cry resounds with the horrors of abortion, euthanasia, gender transition, genetic engineering. Sole purpose is to erase every trace of divine, both in man and in creation, and to break away from the bond between man and God that is fulfilled in the Incarnation. Let us not deceive ourselves. Those who stubbornly insist on meeting the present situation with merely human eyes expose not only themselves but also the whole of humanity to the continuation and aggravation of this situation. Let's then remember the Lord's terrible words. If these are silent, the stones will cry out.